Good afternoon and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio online lunchtime talk. These are live every Friday at 1 p.m, beaming out onto your smartphones, laptops, iPads and living room TVs. My name's Luke and I'm the Pervasive Media Studio producer. These talks are our chance to throw open the digital doors of the studio and for you to hear more from the people who are part of our community or who are working on things that excite us. An especially big welcome to any of you out there who are new to the studio, for whom this might be the first time you're engaging with what you do. For all those of you, here's a little bit more on the studio. The studio is a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, with everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. We're a partnership between Watershed, University of West England and University of Bristol, and we're a home for early stage ideas, companies and creatives, and a meeting place of both the creative and commercial industries. We offer studio space, desk space, meeting rooms, events, networks, and opportunities, all for free for our residents. Ultimately, we're a safe place for artists, creatives, and companies to take risks in their practice and development and make time for collaboration. For this week's lunchtime talk, we welcome Naho Matsuda and Paul Angus, and in this talk they're going to discuss their work, their poetic approaches to data, and the process of developing a shared sentiment of place. This talk is a special one because it's part of Control Shift, which is also as a festival based in Bristol and an exciting new arts programme that's taking place from today onwards, I believe, which includes 3 weeks of workshops, discussions, installations and screenings online and across the city. And they are exploring ways to reframe and rethink our relationships with technology. There's going to be a Q&A at the end, as there is every week, with this week's talk running roughly at 35 minutes. If you want to ask any questions, just pop them into the chat window and I'll pick them out to ask the speakers as we go. Or if you'd like to, you can tweet us your questions at PM Studio UK. A captioned and recorded version of the talk will be available here after the talk is finished. Before we start, next week's talk is Dr. Ducky's Homemade Mutant Hope Machines. We're going to be joined by Ben Walters, aka Dr. Ducky, and Ben will be discussing what makes a homemade mutant hope machine tick and his years of research spent with the legendary queer performance collective Ducky. You can get news on that talk and all our future talks by following us on Twitter at PM Studio UK or Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram, or subscribing to our newsletter on our website. Please don't forget, while you're sat there listening to me talk, to hit subscribe and give the video a thumbs up. The more subscribers we get, the more likes we get, the more we can share stories like this. If you're watching and you think someone might want to see this and they don't know about it, please feel free to share the link now on any of your socials. For now, I'm going to hand over to Naho and Paul.
Great, thank you so much. We're super excited to be here and really amazing to get out of the house because we're actually both in Bristol to present this project, This City Is, tonight as projected on the Bristol Library. And yeah, super excited to be part of this lunchtime talk. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about my practice, and then Paul is going to talk a bit about the work that he does and how we work together, and then we're going to talk a bit more about the project This City Is. Yeah, so tonight from 6 to 11 we will be projecting the project on the Bristol Central Library. If you live in Bristol, please come by and bring your umbrella because it probably might rain, but we will be there anyway. So that's me. And I'm just going to talk about a couple of different projects that I've been working on in the past and currently working on. And in my practice, I'm very interested in the blurred boundaries of language and technology. And so a couple of examples here. This is a very early stage project. So this is just a project sketch, actually, of what I'm trying to work on at the moment. So this is a sketch of a counter, and a counter that's based, so a machine that counts, yeah, just simpler counter, and a machine that's not based on the decimal system, but on a duodecimal system, which is just a different numeric system. Instead of being based on 10, having 12 as a base, which is also based on our hands, like the decimal system being based on our 10 fingers. The duodecimal system is based on counting 12 finger bones. And what I'm trying to do is kind of looking at different ways of counting and how we use mathematics and counting and numeric system to engage with our environment, and how that changes as soon as those systems shift. And I'm interested in how my decimal brain tries to understand the ancient duodecimal system and then write software that is in binary to compute that as a digital output. So I'm building these counters, and while I'm doing these, I'm making these kind of process sketches that are sometimes more confusing than clarifying of where I'm going. So these are, for example, schematic diagrams of the electronics. And I'm really interested in how electronics can be, or how I can build different relationships to them, to my body, and directly to the way I perceive numbers. And then this is a project that's called Moderately Interested. Very different, but again, a project that works with language and found text. And I worked a lot with the National Career Service website of the UK government, which is a website that you can use to get career advice. So anyone can go on the website and take different questionnaires and tests to find out what their interest might be and what kind of work or what kind of studies they want to do. And I was really fascinated with these 84 work activities that are described as all the different works that exist within the UK, and these abstract descriptions of activities, such as designing products for use in people's homes, and how the 5 shades of interest that you have to answer them with, or providing advice to people who have problems. And then this one, typing information into a computer, which is, I guess, also a definition of what I'm doing 90% of the time. And then this project is called Everything Every Time, that I started in 2017 and came out of the artist development scheme that I did with Future Everything in 17-18. And it's a project that uses smart city data and all type of open access urban data and turns that into ephemeral poetic writing of all kinds of things and events that are happening in the city. And this project went to several iterations. So this screen is a flip dot display. And the second iteration, when we had a bit more funding to show it at the Great British Exhibition in Newcastle, we developed a split flap display. I trip up on all these display names. They're so hard for my German tongue to pronounce. And ever since, this project has traveled to different cities and described cities through its city data in different ways and places. And this is also the first project that I worked on with Paul. And maybe, Paul, you want to explain a little bit on your role in the project?
Yeah, hi everyone, great to be here. And this was the first project I worked on with Naho, Everything Every Time. This was through Rascal, which is my brother's company. I'm never quite sure how to describe them. They describe themselves as a multidisciplinary design and fabrication practice. So this was the first time I met Naho working with Rascal and Naho and Dan Het on this Everything Every Time project. This was probably the most technically challenging thing I've ever worked on. This used 132 Arduino Nanos, 4 Raspberry Pis, which are tiny computers used for controlling motors, or I'm sure most of you watching know what they are, but used for controlling motors and taking sensor readings, or just learning, teaching children to code. And my part in this project was to make each of these 120 boxes, which is a letter, say the right letter at the right time, which sounds a lot easier than it is. But from there, I then started working on projects with Naho, the writing machine, and This City Is. And Naho will tell you something about the writing machine project that we worked on.
Yeah, so this April we were part of this poetry festival in Miami called Oh Miami, and we digitally contributed with a writing machine or a kind of a generative poetry or text generator, and I can show you the website. So I think my face is obscuring the generate button that's on the right hand corner, but you can press the generate button and bring up a new letter to Miami. And the way it works is that we build kind of a structure. So this is a structure of a letter to the city of Miami. And we ask for every word different poets that are based in Miami to contribute to a word list. And now that kind of circles endlessly through different letters to the city by different productive builders and hidden doctors. And this project was a direct inspiration from the work of Christopher Strachey, who was based as a computer scientist who was based at Manchester University in the 50s. And for me, he's a great inspiration for a couple of these recent projects that I've been working on, as he's the first person who created digital writing, as well as the first person who composed music with a computer. So that's the computer that he used to write the music, or to write an algorithm that would create love letters on. And the love letters look like this. So it's a very similar system to what we then replicated for this letters to Miami, which is an algorithm that cycles through different word pools and generates letters signed by MUC, Manchester University Computer. And these were posted by Strachey on the notice boards of the university. Yeah, Paul, do you want to talk a little bit about your work and what you do?
Yeah, so I've got a background in computing. I did at university, where I did a project on AI music composition. I've done games programming and English teaching as well in Colombia, South America, and that's kind of all linked back nicely into the work that I've been doing with Naho now. Using my programming skills and what I've learned about languages. At the moment, I'm doing, I mostly do web development, but some of the more interesting stuff I do is with Rascal, who I described before, doing sort of various animatronics projects, lighting, a recent chatbot project, and it was through them, as I was saying, that I ended up collaborating with Naho on data poetics and with Future Everything as well, and the Everything Every Time project. So here's a few examples of some of the kinds of things that I've done with Rascal. These were donation boxes for the National Trust. I don't know if you ever played Screwball Scramble when you were younger, some of the older ones amongst you, just like a coin-operated marble run with various motors getting controlled by Raspberry Pis. And then another one for a bagpipe museum up in the northeast. I'm based in Newcastle, if I haven't mentioned that already. This was teaching a donation box, coin operated, teaching people to play various songs with lights on a keyboard. And then another slide of just a simple lighting project I did for a retro sci-fi bar with a light that was made to look like it was broken, like some kind of seedy backstreet bar. Although you don't get the impression of that from the picture exactly, but that gives you an idea. And then a recent project I've been working on through the lockdown was 5 LED displays hanging on the stairwell of a new tech office space that are broadcasting the distances of the Voyager space probes from Earth, and chatbots having a permanent conversation using vocabulary taken from the Voyager golden discs. So that was the Rascal work, some examples of the Rascal work that I've done, which led me to collaborate with Naho on the writing machine and This City Is, which Naho will speak a little bit more about now.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, so This City Is a collectivized stream of consciousness. And so it's a continuous list of updates ranging from personal opinions to public announcements, commercial calls, and in a way the city is describing itself through statements about itself that are scraped from various social media platforms. And I can again show you the web version. So Paul and I made this web version, I think maybe about a year ago, for a workshop that I was giving in Qatar, in Doha, where I was looking at smart city data and poetic writing. And I wanted to have a tool that uses kind of different tweets or different comments that are available on social media platforms that anyone can look at, but that are specific for a certain place, and group them all together and bring them into a new context. So we created this tool or this web project, and we spent quite a bit of time on trying to make it just a little bit slow, that it would be a little bit annoying to watch, and that would really bring you out of the pace that you would usually scroll on Twitter or browse the internet. So having something that is really slow on the internet happens maybe it happens quite often and it's always annoying, but making something on purpose annoyingly slow was something that I wanted to do. So something that was quite a different pace. And then here again in the right hand corner is a little box that says Bristol at the moment, but you can type in any city, and then it would reload and start describing New York now. And oh, I forgot to give the disclaimer, because this is Twitter. This is not moderated or curated by us. So there's a potential that anything that is on Twitter could mention it. Yeah, could mention some profanities. Not so sure if that one is true. So for, I quickly go back to the slides. Yeah, that was a disclaimer that comes way too late, sorry. This was the workshop in Qatar. And that's the kind of beginning of the project. So I digged out the first idea that I had about the project and sent that to Paul. And it's funny, we were talking yesterday about the beginning of the project and how we work together, and also talking about how these art projects work function very differently in the way Paul works on them in terms of other website or web development project he's doing, and that they're more open-ended ended. But then I found the first slide, deck of slides that I sent to Paul in terms of what I was imagining having. And it's quite precisely what we actually did in the end. But of course, there were lots of different choices that we made to get there. And it's never like the initial idea, but it's interesting to see how I had this simple idea of a website that would just constantly describe a city. And yeah, that was already there. So for the version that we're going to show tonight, and that is very specific to Bristol. So of course it will only show content that is related to Bristol. We've changed the content a little bit, and what I'm sharing here is the back end, what it will be projected. So one part that is different is that it's not only using Twitter, but also other social media platforms. So it's using content from Reddit and from Gumtree as well. And the other point is that for this public projection, I wanted to have more control over what is actually displayed. So we built in a curation process that Paul and I will talk a little bit at the end of the talk later. Because I guess that's a really important topic in terms of Twitter and different social media platforms as a digital public space, and then showing that content back into physical public space and the different considerations and contexts that have to be considered. I guess in this project, what I really like doing and what I like doing in other projects as well is creating these systems that then generate a time on its, a life on its own. So in a way, it's a structure that then runs by itself and generates its own content and generates narratives that I can't predict and that hopefully surprise me or make me smile, or just something that I would never be able to do on my own. And that's, I guess, part of my fascinating in these kind of projects that are so open-ended and where you give up a lot of control how the content looks that you present at the end, and how the project kind of lives by itself. So the project runs when I'm not looking, and that's that's a kind of funny feeling to have, that it's just doing its thing on its own without me doing things anymore. I guess what I'm also interested in all of these projects is how the technology and the platforms that we use shapes the language and the messages that we send. And I'm interested in these kind of vernacular language that exist on different social media platforms, and the very specific context that people would tweet things or would write an ad on Gumtree, or post something on Reddit, and taking that out of the context and recontextualizing it and looking at that from the lens of layers and voices and things that are happening in the city, can give an interesting sense in things that are happening in the city outside of your filter bubble, or like I describe it as kind of reading diagonally through Twitter. So in a way you would never read Twitter in that way as the algorithm does. Oh yeah, and the other interesting part about the project is in this time of COVID and us spending less time outside and in public spaces, and in this time where our cities have changed massively, and how we kind of engage in the city, and kind of the meaning of public space has changed, and who can engage in that, and yeah, where that public space is available and accessible. And I guess a lot of our interactions with the city or with our kind of civic environment happens through screens or through social media or through kind of digital platforms. So in a way, I was interested in how in these times where we feel less connected to a city, or it's harder to get a sense of how the city feels if we actually can't go outside, to have kind of this tool or this project that gives you narratives of things that are happening in the city, yeah, provides you with little snippets of conversations overheard or random bits of information that are floating around. And I guess as all of these platforms, they're always, they're moderated in and designed in certain ways to be used. So I guess they always exclude people, as I guess any type of representation of a city or description of a city is never complete, as it's a kind of impossible project to describe a city. But I think the attempt to describe and capture something is much more interesting than trying to say that's it and that's what we can say about the city. So something that just lives on and keeps us wondering is what I'm interested in. I'm rambling. So Paul, do you want to talk a little bit about back-end things? And
yeah, I'll just explain a little bit about what's going on in the background. So I think we mentioned the term API a few times, which means application protocol interface, which is basically just a way that allows you to interact with another bit of software, and the way that the social media companies, Twitter and Reddit, allow you to access their data. So what we do is we search Twitter and Reddit. So for example, for Bristol, we search for the term Bristol is, and it comes back with a load of tweets and a load of data about those tweets. And we take out the text of the tweet, and we do some sort of basic filtering on that, just to take out sort of marketing tweets full of hashtags and tweets where it wouldn't quite make sense. And then we kind of feed it back into the sentence. So we've searched for Bristol is to get sentences about Bristol, but then we put it back into the projection where we say this city is, and use that sentence. So as Naho was saying about it's running all the time, which is kind of a nice feeling. So it's pulling down these tweets every hour from the Twitter APIs. It was, for me, like interesting to see firsthand just how easy it is to basically extract the global conversation from the social media sites, and how easy they make it for people. We were able to use a free version where we were able to get tweets for the last week. But if you're prepared to pay a lot of money and you're a company or political entity, then you can pretty much search every tweet that anyone's ever sent. I was surprised to see on the Twitter website, when I was looking into it, there was a basic tutorial on what they called opinion mining and sentiment analysis, which sounds like quite sort of dystopian ideas about just being able to quite easily analyze that data and basically tell what everyone's thinking, and then market to them, or try and get yourself elected based upon that. But anyway, we've pulled these tweets down every hour, and they get fed into a curation interface. So there's that other second level of curation that goes into all the tweets before what you see on the projection and what you'll see tonight. And I think Naho is going to tell you a little bit more about how she goes about doing that.
Yeah. So in a way, it's where is it? This one here. Yeah, in all the discourse of how Twitter is moderating content and how that content is moderated, and free speech, etc. As I mentioned before, we've decided for this project that it would be necessary, as we're showing this in public space, to take certain things that I don't want to write in big letters on the Central Library in Bristol out. So Paul designed a system for me where I could just really simply take on and take certain lines. And to be fair, well, I took a lot of profanities out because I thought we're going to start projecting from 7, and I thought if there's young children, I wouldn't want them to see profanities written in large letters on the library. I just yesterday evening started to leave a few in because I felt like it's becoming too unnatural actually to how people speak on Twitter. But the main things that I took out were actually mentioning of a racetrack in Bristol that is the Bristol in the United States. And that gets lots of tweets of people who are excited about racing. And that got quite intense for certain periods, I think, when they had events on. So most of them I rejected because I thought, even though, of course, there's a link of that Bristol being historically linked to this Bristol here, I thought in this context it's not as necessary to have that many tweets about races in America on. And I think in total we have around 3,500 different lines collected so far. I still have to go through quite a few before tonight. So if anyone is going to tweet something about Bristol before the projection, that's going to be probably displayed on the library. So that's an invitation to go wild. And I think that's it from us. Thank you for having us. I hope that made sense, and open to any questions.
Thank you both. It was really good. It's really nice to hear so much more about the project. There are questions already flowing in. They've been flowing in whilst you've been talking, so we're going to get stuck straight in. The first question we've got is, and this is a really interesting one for us as well as the studio that has people who inhabit both creative and technological worlds. Working together, how have you found the interchange of ideas between an artist and a technologist, given that you both are likely to have different technical and creative skills and different viewpoints?
Do you want to take that one? Or?
You can go first.
Okay. I think like Naho is, she's also quite technically skilled as well. I think she sort of really understands that side of it. So I think it's been really easy. She comes to me with an idea, and we discuss it, and she can contribute to the technical side of it as well, and she's really clear on what she wants, and I find it really easy to work with her.
Yeah,
to add
yeah.
to that.
Yeah, I guess it's, for me, it's the same. I guess that's why we've been successfully kind of working together for now a couple of years. Yeah, I think it works really well. Even though we're never in the same room, we always have long Skype meetings. And I think you're also the only person that I still Skype with and not Zoom with. And it's, yeah, it works really great. I think you, yeah, I think we have both a good mix of you being really patient, but also having so many different ways to get to a solution. So I think it's a really fluid process to work together, to come from one idea and then slowly that molds into something that actually works and can be shown to other people. Yeah,
I can't say at any point we've sort of really been stuck and not knowing where to go with something.
Yeah, not yet. I mean, just besides Corona making it difficult to show projects, but yeah.
I mean, that sounds like you've got a match made in heaven there. That's a very smooth process, and nice to hear reference to the antique video software of Skype that seems to have disappeared off the face of the earth as well.
Yeah, I've got Hotmail too.
There's another question for you. Is someone says they're curious about the creative process. How did you bring poetry writing into the project?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I didn't really go back to talk much about my background. So I was trained as a graphic designer and then did a MA in interaction design. And I guess my background in graphic design, I have I guess a way of thinking of visual communication. I'm really interested in language. Visual language, but I think I'm also interested in, or I've always been interested in writing. But for me personally, as I have a mixed cultural background and I've lived for, I think, the last 20 years of my life in countries where I speak in my second language or in my third language, I'm never really confident in writing myself, even though I really as a child, I really used to enjoy writing. So I guess in a way, I build these different systems that do writing for me. And that's how I get around not doing that much writing myself, but I find ways to, yeah, kind of build systems that write. And I guess also in terms of poetry, I think I would be way too shy to call myself a poet, and sometimes poetry has this, I don't know, connotation that I don't know if I want to associate my work with, but then in a way, a poetic type of writing, or just like a not, yeah, it's hard to say, but I really enjoy different absurd or strange ways of articulating and writing things. Yeah. And then sometimes people call it poetry, sometimes it's poetic writing.
Nice, different and absurd. That's always a good way of approaching things. There's another question then from the chat. They're flying in. Alexander asks, says, place can never be digitized by definition, and yet we keep trying. Where do you think this drive stems from? And where did the deeper drive for this project come for you?
Yeah, it's kind of what Sorry, Paul, you.
No, I was just saying, I think that sounds like a question for you.
Oh, yeah, I think, kind of what I mentioned earlier about the attempt to quantify and grasp a place, a space, a city, or is so impossible. And I don't know where the drive comes from. I guess we always try to make maps and collect information about places and kind of try to understand something. I guess that's our way to processing and understanding something, but also in a way it's trying to do that is, I guess, also trying to get control over something, or having trying to get authority, or in a position of power in a way, if you try to map everything out and understand everything. And I think it's much more fascinating accepting that that's impossible, and to see how loose and fluid that system, the world around you is, and that you actually can't grasp it in that way.
Kind of almost following on from that, then there's a question about like what impact do you want this piece in particular to have?
The impact, that's difficult. In a way, as this project has only existed as a website so far, it's really difficult for me to imagine how it will feel as a projected version, as something that is written in the city in big. So I hope that it will, people will be wondering where the writing comes from, and maybe can reflect their own interpretations of things that are happening in Bristol in what they see written, but also maybe be surprised or ask questions. I think I hope that's that people, that will be a piece to have a conversation, or maybe explore also what Bristol could be.
Will it be
maybe also looking for all the things that are.
Sorry.
No, you go. Sorry.
Sorry. I was just going to say, is it when it's presented, will there be much explanation to people about what it actually is, or are you kind of just releasing it into the world for people to experience?
It will be just, I think we will be there tonight. So if anyone comes around, we will be there and we can explain the project. But there's not going to be really a talk or anything. It's just gonna be projected. And I think, or for me, ideally, it's people who kind of just pass by without really knowing that it's on, who hopefully will see it and wonder what it is, and and hope they catch a line or two that inspires them or surprises them.
Great. And just remind me where people can see it, for anyone who might have missed that.
So that's the Central Library in Bristol from 6 onwards until late. And it's a site that faces to the College Green, I think, the big green field. Yeah.
Couple more questions before we wrap up then, if that's okay. Martha says, issues around censorship in public space and the resonance and power of words seem to be quite important at the moment. Could you say a bit more about these issues in relation to your work and its political potential?
Yeah, I guess as soon as you work with, I guess any social media platform, there's a political component of that work, or if you use content from that platform and also openly discuss what it is. So in terms of Twitter, yeah, as I mentioned before, you directly are part of that dialogue of how Twitter and social media platforms are moderating their content, but also, I guess, how these platforms are so powerful and so so well used that it's really difficult to imagine a different system. And I guess, I mean, Paul doesn't have Paul has a Twitter account, but Paul and I are both very, very, very shy on Twitter. We don't do that much, but yeah, I guess just the yeah, that it's almost inevitable to not engage with social media and with these platforms that are run by private companies, and how these private companies make decisions on how we use those platforms, as well as how things are moderated, as well as what they do with the data that they have of all the end users. Yeah.
Great, thank you. We're going to draw to a close there, if that's all right. So I want to say a massive thank you to both of you for speaking today and talking to us more about the project. If there anyone out there who wants to see it, Bristol's Central Library, College Green, 6 p.m. this evening. Don't miss your chance to see what will likely be a really well outdoor, socially distanced piece of artwork and live, which are rare events in these times at the moment. Before we close up, I just want to let you know about next week's talk. It is Dr. Ducky's Homemade Mutant Hope Machines. We're going to be joined by Ben Waters, aka Dr. Ducky, and he'll be discussing what makes a homemade mutant hope machine tick, and his years of research spent with the legendary queer performance collective Ducky. You can get more news and information on that talk and all our future talks by following us on @PMStudioUK on Twitter, or Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram, or by subscribing to the newsletter on our website. Please, if you have 2 seconds before you leave, don't forget to hit subscribe on this YouTube channel and give the video a thumbs up. The more subscribers we get and the more likes we get, the more we can share stories like this. Please, and just a big thank you for watching on this grey, rainy afternoon in Bristol and probably elsewhere around the country. We'll see you all again here, hopefully with some sunshine outdoors next week.